Discovery, and the shuttle has cleared the tower.
Hey, what is going on, you guys? Hope you're having a fantastic day. Brett here from the Health or High Water podcast, coming to you with another episode. What is going on, Trip? How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
Pretty good. And Becca, how you doing today?
Doing good.
So we have Becca from Rocky Mountain IV Clinic. You're also you're a nurse too?
I am.
Okay.
Yep, I'm an RN.
Mm-hmm. RN. So you're an RN too, but you also, we met doing it was an event at Kindred. You came in and we did IVs. You had a bunch of different IVs you were offering, and you're doing that on a travel aspect, right? So people call you and you travel to their houses, to businesses and all that. How's that going right now?
It's going good now. We are, as you can probably tell, we're busier in the fall, the winter, when people are sick. People do it. I was kind of actually surprised because this past summer, this is my first year doing it. This past summer, I expected to be really busy kind of in the summer because people are out. They're, it's hot. They're doing sports. They're doing activities, hikes, that kind of thing. It was so slow. There was not a whole lot going on. So fall and winter is definitely busier because people are sick and they're more desperate. It's expensive and
they're drinking more.
They have that seasonal depression.
Yes.
So they're drinking more.
Yes.
And they're sad because they're drinking more, so they drink more.
They drink because they're sad, and they're sad because they're drinking.
Just this vicious cycle.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's been good. It's been busy.
Rocky Mountain IV, I've seen them all over the place. How'd you get hooked up with them? How does that work?
So my friend Meredith has been doing it for several years. She works for them, and she had told me about it when she got started, and it sounded awesome. And I was like, oh man, that sounds awesome. I didn't even know it was a thing. Like, the IV bars I'd sort of heard about, but the mobile, call them to your house kind of thing, I didn't even know that was a thing. When she told me about it, I was like, that sounds so cool. But at the time, my daughter was little, and I was already working at the hospital, and so I was like, well, there's no way I could add anything more to my plate. And our schedules are crazy. So I was like, okay, well, I'll keep it in the back of my head for when she starts school. So then she started kindergarten last year, and I started the process to apply. And it's just like any other job. You just apply, and they do an interview. What's interesting about this job, though, is that there's no training for IVs because they basically expect you to be really good at them because unlike the hospital, you're by yourself. And when you go into someone's house, you have to be able to successfully get the IV without any help. Yeah. And so this is kind of an interesting part of my journey. Because I work in mom baby, we don't really do a lot of IVs. And so when I applied for the job, and I killed the interview and they really loved me, and I went for my ride along to make sure that I could do the job. I could do the job, but not very well. And at the end of the day, my preceptor was like, so I can tell that you don't do this very often and you need to get some more practice and come back for a second ride along. And
what was the hardest thing? Just the whole process of it, or
to be honest,
the IV in?
Poking someone with a needle is kind of scary, and so my hand would shake, and I'd get really nervous, and he could tell. And my technique wasn't super great either because I wasn't experienced, and so I was able to get them, but kind of sloppy and not very confident. Yeah. And so honestly, that was the best thing that could have happened for him to be like, no, you need to go and get some more practice and come back for a second ride along. And so I did. I spent 2 weeks. I did about 30 IVs. I went to my husband's fire station. I did the whole crew. I did myself. I did the labor and delivery nurses. And then I came back and I crushed it, and the rest is history.
That's funny. Was it confidence for sure. Hey, I know how to do this. But what was the learning curve for you? Was it just or tell me? So,
on the one that I did when I was with him, my the needle. So basically, when you put the needle in, it has to be at a very like low angle because if you go at a high angle, it's like this. You know, you end up poking right through the vein because it's this tiny little surface area, and you only have so far to go until you just poke right through. And so you have to have this really shallow angle going in, and my angle was too high, and then my hand was shaking at the same time, and so it was just like really sloppy. So
yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
What is that? So a phlebotomist, is that somebody who's just trained in IVs? Like, educate me on that.
Yeah, good question. So phlebotomy is different because you're drawing blood, and usually a phlebotomist is actually a lab technician. And nurses, you know, I actually don't know if like a nurse can also be certified as a phlebotomist. I'm not actually sure. But being a phlebotomist is like a totally different job because you work in the lab and you draw blood and you send the blood to the lab. And doing IVs is more of, I think that you can become certified in IVs. However, most of the time you have to be a nurse or a medic because you have to be able to give, like fluid is considered a medication actually. And so you have to be licensed to give medications. So usually, you know, like nurses and medics do, you know, intravenous therapy and phlebotomists just draw blood. So
have you had, I mean, I know you were at Kindred obviously, but have you had somebody called out, Trip?
So I actually got a really good story about this.
Ooh,
I've
okay, story time.
I've got a very good story. So when I first moved to Denver in 2019, I went out with my roommate at the time, and we had way too much to drink. An absurd amount of alcohol. And I woke up feeling like death itself. So I might have called Rocky Mountain IV, to be honest.
Oh, sweet.
It might have been them. But she came up to the house. Like I was couch bound. I could barely get to the door to go get the nurse. So I had a banana bag. Got through the whole banana bag, and she was like, "Do you need to pee?" And I was like, "No." She was like, "Really? The whole banana? You don't have to pee?"
Dehydrated.
She was like, "Let's do one more bag and see where we go." So we did a whole nother banana bag, and she's like, "Do you have to pee?" And I was like, "No." She's like getting worried at this point because I just do two whole banana bags, and I'm still like just feeling like garbage. So she got through a third one.
What?
Then I finally had to pee. She's like, "Okay, I feel safe leaving you now."
What was in the? Do you know what the mixture was, or was it just?
Just like the Myers cocktail, whatever, for hangover stuff, B vitamins and all that kind of stuff. But I went through 3 bags. She was like, "You probably should have gone to the hospital."
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean that's common though. That's a big part of the business, right? People getting sick. So why don't you speak to that for half a second on like there's a performance element to it. Some people I'm assuming just love the way it makes them feel. You have how many different, I mean, you could come up with so many different combinations of things you're putting in these bags, right? So there's a performance, people who use it for performance, but there's also like people who, you know, maybe they've been drinking, maybe they don't feel well. Is it 50-50? How does that work? Or you see?
Honestly, for my patients, there are very few people who do it just because they feel good or for performance even, which I'm surprised with because, you know, I live in Colorado Springs and the Olympic Training Center is right there. And I train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And so, you know, like I would think that I would be like, you know, doing a lot of my my fellow practitioners and, you know, the athletes and stuff. But honestly, I rarely see athletes.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I know. I'm surprised by that because we have a lot of vitamins, L-carnitine and taurine, and, you know, like some of those that are really good for athletic performance and recovery and muscle building. But I don't get very many of those. It's most of the time, and kind of like I mentioned earlier, we're most busy right now in the fall and the winter because people are sick. That's most of the time what I go on are sick people who either have had food poisoning or, have the flu or COVID or whatever and just feel dehydrated and they want the vitamins for like increased immunity. That's most of the people I'd say.
Is that, do you hear that from your other practitioners? Similar story, like, hey, is that across the board?
You know, to be honest, what's funny is like because we're independent contractors, we don't actually talk to each other very often. Like we have a really good online community. We all like our whole company. To be honest, I don't even know how many providers we have. It's hundreds of providers. We don't talk a ton. We communicate over WhatsApp, and that's really cool because occasionally we'll all be communicating about different things, but we don't really talk a lot about like, oh, what have we been seeing lately, and but I do know lately, our management, our leadership has talked about, oh, well, we're in the busy season now because it's flu season, so we have these different specials going on, these different deals, coupon codes, that kind of thing. So it's from what I infer from that, I would imagine that like we're in the busy season, so that's probably what most people are seeing.
Yeah, interesting.
So, yeah.
So marketing. This is your first year doing this. You're working part-time as a nurse. And what's it like marketing or trying to like get new? You're seeing return people, some of the same people that are calling you?
Occasionally.
Yeah.
So the good thing about our company is and working as a 1099 independent contractor through a company and not just being like on my own, I don't have to really do a whole lot of marketing. The one thing that actually we have been doing as a company is we were doing this contest with Google reviews. So like whichever provider got the most Google reviews in a month got a bonus. And that was really cool. So like our company has really good reviews because we were getting Google reviews like super often. So that's one thing that really helps with the marketing. And then second of all, I have my own like business cards that have the company logo, but then like my own personal information. And so each time I see a patient, I'll give them my business card and say, if you need me to come back tomorrow because you're still feeling dehydrated, or, next time, just keep my card on hand.
Yeah.
And if you need me, I'll come back anytime. You can just text me. It's much easier that way if we just see the same people. So there have been a few repeat patients that I've had. One of them was an elderly gentleman who just couldn't stay hydrated. Like he's like this old, frail, guy, and he just could not drink enough water and he couldn't eat enough food. And so I saw him a couple times to get him rehydrated. And then my other people that I see, my only other sort of like athletes that I see are a couple friends of mine that compete in jiu-jitsu all the time. And so they usually always get one before their competitions, which is really nice. So,
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
yeah.
Pre-fuel. What is going into kind of like the different things you offer? First of all, what's NAD? I hear it all the time.
Yeah.
What is that?
Oh, I'm so excited about this one.
Yeah, it's good stuff. It's pretty awesome. So it stands for nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, and basically it is a coenzyme that already exists in our body. It exists in every cell. It's a coenzyme that helps our bodies regenerate new cells with clean DNA free of error. So it helps with tissue regrowth. It helps boost metabolism. It helps with a lot of people with like metabolic disorders or autoimmune disorders could really benefit from more of it. It's like, I've given it a couple of times to friends who have had surgery and like their recovery is going horribly and they wake up the next day like feeling amazing. So
since, and I know this might be like a kind of a deeper question into this, since cancer comes from DNA replicating wrong, does that supposedly help with like cancer patients and potentially preventing cancer?
That is a really good question, actually. So it's interesting, actually, because if someone has cancer and they're in active treatment and they're not in remission, it's actually contraindicated, believe it or not, because we know a lot about NAD, but we don't exactly know a lot about how it interacts with cancer cells.
Interesting.
And because it helps with tissue growth, it could actually maybe make the problem worse, but we're not sure. And so
Okay.
I think it's kind of one of those, like, we stay far away from it just because we don't know for sure. We don't want to cause harm. And so it's contraindicated if someone has cancer and is not like and is undergoing current therapy. So pretty interesting. I haven't heard the research or statistics on preventative for cancer. I'm not exactly sure, but
Just popped in my mind. I was like, if we're
that's a
trying
really
to
good question.
prevent something, and it helps, the DNA replicate properly.
Yeah,
That might
maybe.
be
I mean,
a
it makes
great
sense.
preventive, because that's the issue with carcinogens, that it causes our DNA to go all funky.
Totally.
If NAD does help with that process of regeneration and new cell development, healthy cell development, then I assume only, if it looks like a duck and walks like a duck, it must be a fucking duck.
Yeah. Yeah.
The casual F-bomb.
I'm going to put this in explicit now.
I think we made it 3 or 4 episodes without the
Oh, no, I just kept on whispering cuss words the whole time.
NADs.
Oh my gosh.
I love it. So what about, where were you born?
I was born in California, and I lived there till I was 5, and my dad was a pastor, actually, and so then we came out to Colorado when I was 5 so that my dad could plant a church. So.
Oh, is he still doing that? Or?
No, it never really, he planted a couple churches, but I'm the oldest of 6 kids, and so trying to provide for 6 kids while you're making absolutely nothing as a pastor was really difficult on the family, and the church planting thing was incredibly difficult. So he stopped when I was in 7th grade.
So oldest of 6.
Yeah, good times.
What? Yeah. What was getting bathroom time like?
It's like watching a commercial for the WWE.
Yeah. Ugh. My dad had to put a second water heater in our house because there was never enough hot water. It was a thing.
There's nothing worse than trying to take a shower and it's cold.
Yeah.
I guess I'll just ice bath today.
It was the best, though, honestly. Always having something to play with, and our family is incredible. We're all still super close and get together every month, and it's.
Are they all here in local area?
Everybody except for my brother Jeremiah. We're all kind of I have a brother in Centennial, and then a sister in Monument, and then another sister in the Springs in addition to me. And then my parents still live in Castle Rock, and I have a sister in Castle Rock, and then my brother in Georgia.
Do you have anyone else in the family that got into the medical field?
Nope. It's just me.
What got you into, so before I go into that, you played sports, right?
Ish.
Club cricket.
Club
Couldn't make
cricket.
the official team.
When I was a kid, I did a season of softball. Back when I was still I can't remember if I was still homeschooled at that time, but then I tried volleyball for a couple of years in middle school, but was horrible at it. I'm just really awkward and not
You
very.
look so athletic. I was
I
was thinking you're I went to
Track
stand.
star.
I would consider myself an athlete now with training
Okay.
training jujitsu. That's the only thing that I've really ever been good at. Because before that, the volleyball was terrible. I did one season of softball and was pretty good at that. When I was in high school, I tried it again and I really loved it. But I started working at this little pizza joint in Castle Rock called Nicolo's, and I started doing that when I was 15. So then I didn't really have time for sports. So then I just stopped doing sports. So
15. Was that your first job?
yeah,
Piece of job?
yep.
I told my dad, I was like, Dad, I want to get a job because I wanted to buy some stuff. He's like, no, you're playing sports. I'm like, my first job was until I was 21.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't work a single job. I wanted to work early, but he's like, no, you're playing baseball.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's
That's so
pros
crazy.
and cons to starting work early.
For sure.
That's, I sort of, in a way, regret doing that, starting work early and not playing softball more, because I was like, that would have been really fun to play softball in college or take it further, because I was pretty decent at it, but at the same time I feel like I was successful in all of my jobs after that because I started so young, and I started I learned a good work ethic early on and learned what it means to like be a good team player. And so it was pros and cons, you know?
Yeah.
And there's no right answer to that either,
Yeah,
right? You know, there's
totally.
like choosing. It's like, well, what am I gonna do? So there's no like right answer. You know, if
Yeah.
you want to start working. You know, like I had a very different experience. My dad was like 14. Like, you're getting a permit and you're going to work.
Dang, that's crazy.
I love your dad so much.
It's like, I'm waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning. You are too.
Wow. That's
Tripp's
crazy.
dad's the real deal.
Is he?
Yeah,
That's cool.
He's about as America gets.
Pretty much.
Yeah, he's a hardworking kind of guy.
That's awesome.
So what got you into nursing then? You know, that's a tough field now, especially. It's getting harder.
Yeah. Nursing was actually not my first plan. I actually wanted to go to medical school. And I wanted that from the time I was like 13 years old. I knew I wanted to go into the medical field. And I think part of it was just like being the oldest of so many kids and learning, you know, just being used to being responsible for everybody around me and taking care of everybody around me. I guess it was just sort of a natural course for me. But so, yeah, I started college, pre-med, but I met my husband first semester of freshman year. And at that time, he's like, oh, you should be a nurse. You shouldn't go to school for so long. And I'm like, don't take my dreams. This is my life. And so then I stayed on that course. But then after a while, I was like, no, I want to get married and have kids and move on with my life. I don't want to be in school for 15 years or however long it takes. And so then I looked at being a physician's assistant. And I got my EMT in order to, go on that. There's only 2 PA schools in all of Colorado, and one of them you have to have 2,000 hours of documented medical experience. And the medical jobs I worked in medical records when I was a senior in high school at a doctor's office, and then I also worked as a scribe, which is basically like a doctor's assistant in the ED, in the emergency department. I did those, but that didn't count towards this, and so I was like, oh, yeah, it sucked. I was like, seriously, all this time? And so then I went and got my EMT, but what was interesting was God very clearly had other plans for me because EMT is one of the easiest jobs you can get because of the high turnover rate. I applied for like 15 EMT jobs and never got hired anywhere.
Why is the turnover rate so high?
It is a hard job because they're not compensated very well. You could make more working at the movie theater. You don't make very much money, and it is super hard on your body. You're going into people's houses. It's EMS.
Yeah.
And so, it's basically like being on the fire department where you're going into people's houses, you're going into potentially unsafe situations, but they don't get compensated hardly at all.
Why is that? Why do they not get compensated?
I'm not super knowledgeable on this, and so I'm not entirely sure, but from what I gather is because they are, like most EMTs, if you're not employed by the city as like a firefighter or, through the government as a firefighter or something else, and you work for a private ambulance company, they just don't have the funds or the money to pay their people very well. And so, it's not great. It's a great, if you're passionate about it and you're cool with that, best job ever.
Yeah.
But if you, want more, it's kind of more of a stepping stone. And that's what it was for me. And so that's why I went for it. But nobody ever hired me. And so I was like, well, I don't know what to do now. And so then my husband brought back up the nursing thing. But by
Very
this
adamant.
time, yeah, I know. But by this time, I was like a senior in college, like several years had gone by. And so I got to my last year and I was like, I'm almost done with my biology degree. I don't want it to all be for naught. And he was like, oh, well, UCCS has an accelerated nursing program. Why don't you just go for that? And then you can become a nurse practitioner after that and do the same job. And I'm like, well, you're so smart. I wish I would have listened to you 3 years ago, $35,000 ago. And, and so that's what I did. So I finished out my biology degree and I went back the next semester for the accelerated nursing program and started nursing. And that was my plan all along, was to go to nurse practitioner school after that, but I'm never going back to school ever again. Probably not. Yeah.
Well, once you've had enough, you had enough.
Yeah. And it burned me out so hard. It was a lot. So here I am. And honestly, it's like the best. Like again, God had other plans for me and knew exactly what I needed because, I work in mother baby now at the hospital and doing this IV job, and it is just like the best. And I just love it so much. And, at the time that I had my whole goal of being a doctor, I didn't realize that they don't get to spend a lot of time with their patients because they have 50 patients or however many, the ones that work in the hospitals. And they work a lot and they don't get to spend a ton of time with their families. And I work 2 days a week and I get to spend as much time with my patients as I want. And I'm also a charge nurse. And so I get to be a leader on my unit and, I love my people and it's just like the best. So it worked out.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I was thinking while you were talking, I was thinking back, this was probably like 12, I don't even know, maybe 15 years ago where I was wanting to be a personal trainer and considering, what's the personal trainer master's degree?
Kinesiology?
Yeah, like kinesiology,
yeah.
Exercise physiologist. I was like, I want to do all this stuff. And, education is such a virtue. I think people should learn to the day they die. I think it's the key to living a happy life is like being passionate about something, finding an interest in it. And then if you can make a career out of it and eventually a vocation, like that's the ultimate goal. And, I was researching and looking up what schools costed. And the one I was looking at was going to cost, $200,000 to get this. And
geez.
I had made some bad decisions in my life as a kid. And one of the best ones was like, you know what? I think I'm going to go for the $300 personal training certification.
100%.
And I was like, and then I'll start working with people right away. And so 15 years later, and I don't know how many hours, and it's just like I think that's a big thing for people. Find your passion, but don't think that some degrees are so important. But I think you can just start doing it. Find ways to just start doing it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's a really hard balance of like pursuing education and more knowledge and like, becoming more resilient and like expanding your knowledge base. But it's hard because, going to college and getting a degree is so incredibly expensive and it's stressful and it's time consuming. And there are so many other ways, like you said, to like get the job that you want and live your passion and do what you want to do without being thousands of dollars in debt and, killing yourself to try to like get a degree.
Yeah.
I mean, it just doesn't have to be that way, which is awesome.
Yeah, and people grind their whole life, and they get there, and they're like, and 'cause as you were talking about being a doctor, and I talk to some doctors now they're trying their best to get out of the field. They're like, I need to start some of my own practice. I just see it, and I see the health and wellness sector and field transitioning over the last 10 to 12 years. The IV stuff now is exploding. Oxygen bar and like all this other genetics now and all this. It's cool. It's interesting and cool and like fun to see where this is all going.
That's actually a good question. I know we're getting kind of close to the end, right, wrapping up. Where do you see IV and these kind of intravenous and different styles of recovery coming in down the road? Like, do you see like, maybe a different form of NAD coming down the road? Like what do you think the future holds for us here?
That's a really good question. Something I've never really thought about before, but since you asked.
Since we're live.
Oh, put on the spot. Well, what's interesting is what I've seen from medicine and healthcare in general is it seems like a lot of people are moving away from like Western medicine and pharmacology and more embracing like the homeopathic side of things. And, I have a coworker who's becoming she's called like a practitioner of naturopathy or some kind of like naturopathic practitioner. But anyway, it just seems like a lot of people are moving that way because there's so many incredible natural remedies that we can take advantage of. And, with that in mind, it seems like intravenous therapy would be along those lines as well. Where we definitely do a little bit of pharmacology. Like, we carry Toradol, which is, an NSAID, and we carry Zofran for nausea, and we carry, Benadryl for congestion. And, we carry those, but people definitely latch onto the vitamins more
Yeah.
and prevention. And so, I definitely could see it becoming more and more popular as we go along. And again, like it was something that I'd never even heard of a couple of years ago. And so to, have it, be able to tell people about it, and people get really excited about it, and they're like, oh, that's so cool. Like you come to my house and, I don't even have to leave, and it's, I feel better, and, I don't have to go to the emergency department. And so, I could definitely see it growing a lot more with all of the other sort of like natural remedies for health and prevention. So
That's a good answer.
This is so cool. I'm so excited. Number one, thank you for doing the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited for the future. People can find you. You can go directly to their house. You can go to their business. If they have a business, you can go and set up an event. Best way to contact you, how do they get in touch with you? We'll put some stuff in the description, but how do they find you?
Probably, let's see, if you look up our company, Rocky Mountain IV Medics, you can request me by name. You can also probably email me. It's kind of long. I don't know, should I?
We'll put the email in the description, you guys.
Perfect.
Yep. And then shout out to your husband's jiu-jitsu gym. What is it?
Yeah, it's called Tabula Rasa. It's in Colorado Springs, and it is awesome.
Let's go. And you said it's gi and no gi, right?
Yep, it is. Mm-hmm.
All ages welcome?
Yep. We do kids classes from 4 years old up to all the way up to adults, and there's no maximum age. We have people in their 50s who train.
That's
so,
awesome.
Yeah.
That is so cool.
We got a silver sneaker class. It's like all 80 years.
Yeah.
It's called what?
It's like a silver sneaker class. It's just 80-year-olds doing jiu-jitsu.
Dude, I'm telling you, like jiu-jitsu is very meditative.
It's the best.
It's exploded. Well, you guys, thanks for joining us on this episode. We've been talking with Becca Roy, and we'll put all her information in the description. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care, and we'll see you on the next episode.